From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming a true pioneer in Australian skydiving, Greg Miff Smith. With a career spanning nearly 5 decades, Greg has been instrumental in shaping the sport in South Australia and beyond. Since making his first jump in 1977, he has logged thousands of jumps, earning a reputation as one of Australia's most experienced and respected chief instructors. Greg's impact on the sport goes far beyond personal achievement. In 1986, alongside friends Gavin Northsworthy and Kevin Taylor, he helped introduce tandem skydiving to South Australia, making the sport more accessible to first-time jumpers. Over the years, he has played a vital role in advancing safety protocols and equipment standards, setting benchmarks that have influenced skydiving operations across the country. At SA Skydiving, Greg wears many hats. He has served or currently serves as a director, senior pilot, drop zone safety officer, examiner, and instructor for both tandem and accelerated freefall. Since its founding in 1989, SA Skydiving has become one of the premier drop zones in Australia, offering a range of experiences from tandem jumps to solo training at breathtaking locations around South Australia. Beyond his leadership in the industry, Greg has fostered a tight-knit skydiving community, mentoring countless jumpers, including his own children, who have followed in his footsteps. His passion for the sport, commitment to safety, and dedication to growing the next generation of skydivers have made an undeniable impact on skydiving in Australia. I'm honored to welcome my friend, Greg Miff Smith, to the 20-Minute Call podcast. How you doing there, Miff?
Thanks, James. A little bit flattered with all that, but thank you.
I expected that you would be. That's in line with who I know you to be. I want to start, Miff. I've only ever been introduced to you when we met maybe 10 years ago when I visited Australia, and you and your family were so kind to both my wife and myself. It was an amazing visit, and you run a fabulous drop zone. And for those who are unfamiliar, SA Skydiving is South Australia skydiving. But Miff, I want to start with this. Where does the Aussies have the coolest nicknames? Where did Miff come from?
My second name is Smith, and so a lot of people call me Smithy. And back, probably 35 years ago, you'd be drinking around the fire, and this girl Jan Halen would be calling me, "Hey, Smithy, grab a support, and hey, get us another drink, Smith. Hey, Smith. And by the end of the night, it'd be Miff. I go, you're not giving you anymore. You can't even say my name. And then she said at the start of the night, I'm going to call you Miff, so then you don't know when I'm drunk. So that's the story to it.
Oh, that's a great story. Miff, since I've met you, this is the thing that has remained when I think about you, and that is positivity, always optimistic, just ready to get after it. I imagine when you get out of bed in the morning, you're charging.
I still am, James, but I just want to tell you a little bit of a funny story about your mother. I wash the cars pretty regularly, and every time I wash the cars, and it's been more so since you came 10 years ago, and you told us the story about your mum when she was out at 5 a.m. in the morning washing the car and said, well, this is the first thing that people see. And I'm always on to the guy, we've got to wash these cars. And I wash that car, and every time I wash that car, I think about you with that story, with your mother.
I can't believe you remember that story. That's a good decade ago that I told it.
Yeah, I think of that story every week when I wash the cars. And it motivates me. I go, yeah, the cars need to be clean. They need to be washed because, as you know, we're in a very dusty environment out here. and they need to be washed weekly. And that has always motivated me to what your mum said to you, which you said to me.
For our listeners, just to put that in context, my parents are lifelong entrepreneurs, and I shared when I visited Miff about 10 years ago that you only have one chance to make a great first impression. And I was telling the story of my mum, who at the time was in her mid to late 60s running this business, and I woke up very early in the morning and I said, "Mum, is there anything I can do to help?" And she said, "Yes, we would like for you to pick up these hotel guests." And rather, when I came out the next morning to go and collect those guests, my mum was there in her little pink nightgown, washing the car. And when I asked her what she was doing, she then told me, "James, you only have one chance to make a great first impression." And that has always stayed with me. And I should share with you, I was just visiting my parents 2 weeks ago in Antigua. And my mum still takes such good care of her car. She even moves, has this big cover that she puts over the car, but only she moves it around the car as it follows the sun, just to keep everything off. And of course, it's just so clean. But anyway, well, thanks for my mum, who listens to the show religiously, will be completely thrilled to know that her name resonates with you all this time.
I've never met your mother, but that definitely washed off onto me.
Fantastic. Miff, before we get into skydiving and your life, I have no idea of what life was for you before skydiving. Tell me about your background, where you grew up. What were your early years like?
I was brought up in Melbourne, just in the suburbia of Melbourne. Had an absolutely awesome mum and dad. My mum was a very tough woman, very strict. And my dad was the direct opposite. He was very easygoing, very relaxed, and he only just passed, and we were just in conversation. Said, with the four of us boys, did Dad ever lose his cool with you three? And all the other three brothers said never. He never ever lost his cool in his 95 years with us. So my dad, I had a very good upbringing with my parents, with my mum and dad. I left school at 16 and did an apprenticeship as a fitter and turner. We used to go to an island called Phillip Island, where we used to go surfing from a very young age of 8 right up until 18 years of age, and finished my apprenticeship. And then I actually then fell into skydiving. We were at a party one night and socialising, and 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and met a skydiver who was running a course, and whammo, 6 of us next morning were signed up on a day course. And it all started from there. But no, I had a very gifted upbringing. I had no traumas or anything in my whole life. I was very, very lucky.
Would you say that your positive outlook and energy comes naturally from your dad, or does that come from somewhere else?
It comes from a mixture. My mum was very, very strict on good mental health. You know, she said, you need to hit the floor every so often, and there's nothing wrong with that. But she said, when you're down there, she said, look what's happened and gone wrong, and look at yourself. And then she said, look at the people who are there when you are down. And then she said, get yourself back up on your feet and don't look back. And she was always very strict on that. Get up on your feet, walk tall, stand strong. So I'd give my mother a lot of credit for that. And my dad was just always very nurturing, always there to help. He'd always be out helping you fix your car, or he's helped build 2 drop zones and a house for me. Been there the whole way. They've been there the whole way. But my parents have had a very, very positive outlook on life as well.
What were their occupations when you were growing up?
Mum looked after us 4 kids, and my dad was a civil and architectural draftsman. My dad was always good at very good little quotes. He used to always keep saying to me, he said, look, if you're not very good at something, just surround yourself by the best. And he said, they'll make you look good. And I have sort of stuck with that. And I always said, well, so what are you saying, Dad? I made sure, because I said, if you do surround yourself by the best, they actually do pick you up. I also follow Michelle Obama, and that's what she quotes. She said, always surround yourself by people that bring the best out in you. She said, move away from people who bring you down. Only be with people who make you a better person. So I think that's part of it too. I think in life is you get options of who you want to be with, and that's one of the things I love about skydiving, the diversity of the people that come through. And you got such a wide diversity, and they all very passionate about it. And I've just had so much support and help from these people. And as you could see it when you were here with Jed and Jana and Bryce and the whole crew, they're very dedicated. They're the ones that make it look good. That's what my dad said. They're the ones that make you look good, mate. Yeah, I do have a positive outlook, and I do enjoy that.
Yeah, and it does take a village. You've got amazing people around you. So you made your first jump in 1977.
Yeah, I made my first jump in 1977 at a place called Labatouche, which is about an hour east of Melbourne. It's just on a paddock similar to we are here, and it was on 4.5 gear with a round parachute and a chest-mounted reserve. And I did just under 100 jumps on round parachutes with chest-mounted reserves. And then I was around about the 100 jumps when I was about to buy my first rig, and my chief instructor said, and he said to me, now, a lot of the younger jumpers are saying, buy the piggyback system with both parachutes on your back. And my chief instructor came up to me and he said, do you want to have your parachutes on your back, so if something goes wrong, he said, how are you going to reach them? Or do you want your reserve here on your chest where you know where it is and you've got it, and if something goes wrong, you can just pull that handle and you can throw it. I said, yeah, that's what I need. Fortunately, the younger jumpers then got older and go, no, it's the piggyback system you need to buy as your first rig. So I had my first rig just over 100 jumps.
And it was a piggyback system?
No, it was the younger generation, the young sports skydivers did pull me back across the line. I was nearly ordering a chest-mounted reserve and a piggyback system, but then the sports skydivers pulled me back over the line to get a container called a top secret, a container with both parachutes on the back and a 5-cell Stratastar with a 22-foot Lopo round reserve, I think it was.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Burble. You've seen so much change, Miff, in almost 50 years. And 2 years from now will be 50 years since your first jump.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me, I mean, for a lot of that time also, you've been owning this drop zone. You've seen so much. You've seen the sport transform with the gear. Undeniably, if you've been in the sport this long, we've lost friends. We've been through different aspects of the economy, the highs, the lows. How have you kept going for all this time without wanting to throw the towel in? Because, it's not an easy career.
No, but it is an awesome lifestyle. It has always given me a lifestyle. It's never been a big financial one, but the lifestyle, one, to be able to have your kids with you at work. There's not many jobs that you can have your children with you at work, which I don't really see it as work. There is work parts of it, the grind of the administration side and the negotiations and that. But the people have is one of the big things that have kept me in it, the lifelong friends. And just watching the changes, the changes are just so exciting. But when you're in the era of round parachutes and that, at that stage, you think it can't get any more advanced. It just, this is it. This is it. And then someone comes up, we've got a square parachute. Oh, this is all right. Oh, this is it. This can't go any further than this. And then we went to square reserves. It's just seeing massive changes. When we with the round parachutes, like if you went without a fractured ankle in 4 weeks, it was an amazing run. And when someone did fracture an ankle, there was no hoo-ha like there is now. You just throw them in the back of the panel van or the van and off they go to hospital. Whereas now the whole drop zone goes into trauma, and you call the ambulance, and you go, oh God, what's the fuss? So it's been some incredible change.
Have you experienced much injury in your career?
I've had a really good run. When I started, I ran about 80 jumps. I did a hairline fracture in one ankle, and another 20 jumps. I did a hairline fracture in the other ankle, and then I've broken both scaphoids, both wrists. We're waiting for the wind to drop, and we thought it had dropped, and 5 of us went and jumped, and 4 of us ended up in hospital. I ended up with 2 arms in plaster, and then getting to the hospital doors, and the doors had got pulled. And I thought, right, first obstacle of many. Since about 100 jumps, 150 jumps, I've had a very good run. I've had no other fractures or injuries since there's the round parachutes. But once on squares, I've had a very run, but I don't push it hard either. I loved listening to Craig Gerard. I must say, like when you were saying just one last question, Craig, and I'm just going, no. But I'm a bit like him. I'm just a 90 or a 180 man. I don't push the landings. And that's what I do see now, which I'm onto the young ones, is I'm going, look, you know why you get grumpy old men? I said, from stupid things they did when they were young, of injuries. And then I said the pain comes out later on in life. And that's what I'm seeing with these very high-performance parachutes, when they're coming sliding in and so forth. But no, I'm fairly conservative, and I've always been pretty conservative on landings, that is. But injury-wise, it was just my younger days under the round parachutes and jumping in too high winds.
Miff, you said you were training, or you were a fitter and a turner. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, fitter and turner, that's if you're doing tool making, that's making injection molds. If you've got plastic parts in cars, mostly, plastic dashboards, you actually got to you got a big lump of steel and you've got to machine that out to the shape of the mold. You're working from blueprints. Very, very, very accurate. But the only problem was the metal industries is a very poor paying end of it. And I finished my apprenticeship and I ended up travelling around Australia and fell into earth moving, driving machinery, dozers and scrapers and loaders and excavators and things like that, which paid twice the money. And I spent probably 15 years in that, and then went into irrigation, and then, as you said, Gavin and Digger, the 3 of us bought a tandem rig. And it was a bit of a hobby to start off with, and it took off. And then that's when the divide in the road come with, do I want to do an irrigation business digging holes or taking people tandem skydiving? And that's what I decided to do. And that's, again, what you talked about, having a positive outlook, because sometimes with tandem skydiving, you're taking people and you're going, oh, God, this can get a bit monotonous. And my mother said to me, you've got a job where you're making people happy. She said, people aspire to being a doctor. And she said, a doctor you have 15 minutes with a doctor, so you see 4 people an hour, 16 before lunch, 16 after lunch, all coughing and spluttering and telling you stories and trying to get prescriptions. She said, every job is repetitious. She said, you've got a fantastic job. You don't get much better where you're making people happy. And she said, same as an airline pilot. He's up the front there just flying Melbourne to Sydney, Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Melbourne, Melbourne to Adelaide. So, we have got a fantastic, you take people in and you've got the responsibility of somebody's safety, and that's the other one. And it is immense satisfaction when you take someone for a skydive and it all comes together and you pull it off, and the person's on a massive high. Most people are on a massive high. Some people it's the worst experience they've done. But majority of people, it's the most amazing thing they've done. So there's a huge satisfaction in that, I find.
At what point do you take the hobby and decide to make it your life? What was the linchpin, if you will, that said, okay, I'm walking away from the comfort of the paycheck of everything that I had been doing, to full on, this is going to be my profession?
Yeah, well, that was around 1987, 88. Yeah, I had the irrigation business going, and we had the tandem skydiving business going, and it was dividing the time up, and it did become a choice, but it wasn't hard to make the choice. It was a very easy choice that I just go, yeah, this is what I want to do. Yeah, this is what I want to do. Yeah, I just took the hook and I just went for the bait. I just said, I just saw it as, this is an awesome opportunity. I just loved it.
So how did you get to South Australia? Because you're originally from Melbourne. What was the connection of setting up there? And for those listening, highly recommend visiting SA Skydiving. Some amazing wineries, vineyards, right down the road. Some of the best wines in the world comes out of this little region. But how did you get there, Miff?
Well, I left with a friend to do an around Australia trip, travelling and jumping. And we stopped in on the Gold Coast, which is up towards Brisbane. And that's where I actually fell into earth moving. We're in the caravan park, and the Gold Coast was going ahead with canals and so forth. And we had a couple of people living at the caravan park, which were working for an earth moving company. And the boss was always chasing for extra people to plant operate. And these two guys, which I befriended very much so, they used to took me down on Sundays when they weren't working, and they taught me how to drive some of the machinery on Sundays, and then took me in for a job. And the guy could see I couldn't operate very well, but he needed operators, and he persevered with me, and I fell into earth moving there. And we were earning very good money working on the Gold Coast up near Brisbane, and that's when the interest rates hit 18%. And the whole thing collapsed, This is back in the early 80s, I think it was, and interest rate hit 18%, and the whole thing collapsed. And I met a girl called Beth who had a holiday romance who came to the Gold Coast, and she came from Adelaide. And when interest rates hit 18%, I ended up back in Melbourne, back in my mum and dad's house, with my tail between my legs and unemployed. And my mum could see I was moping around, and I was contacting this girl in Adelaide, and she actually booked my car on the train and myself on the train and sent me over to Adelaide. She said, you might be over there looking for work than being here, than being happy. So it was actually a girl, James, that brought me to South Australia, and I've been here ever since.
You're not the last skydiver. Not the first nor the last that is because of a girl.
No, not at all.
Tell me about your kids. I know your son, Jed, fabulous skydiver, fabulous guy. Tell me about taking him through skydiving, because you taught him. And if I recall, his rate of learning was not the type of rate of learning you hear these days.
Oh, no. Keep in mind, you couldn't do solo courses till you're 16, and you could do a tandem skydiving at 14. So obviously he did 14. He did his first tandem, and so he had 2 years that he had to do tandem. So in 2 years we did over 70 tandems, and we were doing everything from we were doing display jumps. We were doing non-contact CRW. We taught him how to do flag jumps into stadiums with the tandem. It was a shorter list of what we weren't doing. So the time he came up to doing his AFF at 16, I sort of said, look, I said, we're not going to use a student rig, we'll use a sports rig. I said, it'll be just myself, one jump master, and we're going to try and bang this out in a day. So you're with your A licence, you need 10 jumps landing within 25 metres of the target and 50 metres of the target, and you need to complete the AFF program, which was 9 jumps, right? So we took off before the sun came up, and we got to 12,000 feet as the sun was rising, and did his first skydive, just myself and him, just the two of us on a sports rig, and went into free fall, and I released him by 9,000 feet, and he was completely falling solo by himself. And we progressed through, and he did 13 jumps on his first day. So 13, he blew a couple of the accuracies. I said, we need to keep going to get these accuracies. And so, yeah, by the end of the day, he'd finished his A licence and did 13 jumps and did his A licence in one day. And then he sort of crashed out pretty early, and I come bouncing through his door next morning, and I said, hey, let's do your B-rail jumps, which is 10 jumps. And he just looked up out of his bed and he said, nah, go away.
He realized he had muscles that he didn't know that he had after that first day.
Yeah, 13 jumps is one day.
Amazing. And how many jumps does Jed have now?
He's got well over 4,000. He'll be coming up to nearly 5,000, I think. He's done a lot of jumps.
Miff, during our visit about, roughly 10 years or so ago, you all had recently returned from a base jumping expedition, essentially. I think it was in Norway, and you and your son base jumping together, which is so rare. If I recall, I think I remember seeing video of you literally, like you holding his feet and someone else holding his shoulders and tossing him over the side. Not your normal father-son activities. Tell me about that.
Well, I was never going to go base jumping myself, and I wasn't that keen on the base jumping like with him. And a very good friend, Doogs, I don't know if you know the name, Doogs, he's a very renowned, one of the best base jumpers
legend.
in the world. Yes, he runs a base school now. Jed was having his 18th birthday here at the drop zone. And Doogs rings me up. He goes, hey, has Jed got his 18th birthday at the drop zone, has he? I said, yeah, it's this weekend. He said, look, I just happened to be in Melbourne. He said, I might come across to it, And I said, Doogs, I said, you're about 38 years old. You're going to look like a pedophile amongst the kids, aren't you? He goes, oh, come on, mate. I said, you're on a recruiting mission, aren't you? I said, what, are you running out of people, mate? They're all dying on you or something, are they? And you come on a recruiting? Oh, I said, come on, mate, that's a bit harsh. So he came over and I put up big Uncle Sam posters, we need you for base jumping. Anyway, he come over for Jed's 18th birthday, and sure enough, Monday morning we're having breakfast together, and he said, oh, Dukes is talking about base jumping. He said, I think I might go across. He said, he's going to be over in the States and he'll take me base jumping. I said, yeah, of course you are. I said, I said, right. So I said, that's when I rang Dukes up, and I said, Dukes, I said, look, if he's going to do this, I said, I want him to do a course, I want in skydiving, we do an introduction of the parachutes and how they open, and, we do a course and then we test their training. I said, if you're going to do this, I want him to do it. And then I said, I'm going to come across as his manager. I said, I want to make, I'm going to come across. I said, I've invested a fair bit of money into Jed. He said, yeah. He said, so. He said, Tom Alio, I think his name is. He said he's running courses. He said I'll get him to do it, and I'm gonna start doing courses myself. So we went over to the States, and then I was over there, and I thought, oh God, if you're going to do it, I might as well do it too. So we both did the course over in Idaho off the Pine Bridge. And, we ended up doing, I think, 34 jumps. I think Jed did 40-something jumps off the bridge. I did 34 jumps off the bridge. From there, we jumped on a plane, and then we went to Norway. And this is when he came of age. And we're climbing up the mountain, which is about a 2-hour walk, and there was about 6 or 8 of us going up at a time and doing these jumps off the cliffs in Norway. And on this day, the weather had came in. And it was completely clouded, fogged us all in, and we all got lost from each other. And then we ended up bringing each other by cooing. We brought each other, and we got to the cliff edge, and we got low drizzle, low rain, and I thought, this is fucked. Anyway, I pulled my phone out, and I'm in phone range. So I'm on the Dukes. Hey, Dukes, we're at such and such an exit point. The clouds come down on us. It's raining. What do you think we should do? And Dukes comes straight back. He said, Miff, he said, let one of the young ones go first. He said, if they're in cloud for less than 5 seconds, he says, you're right to go. He said, if they're in cloud for more than five to say 8 seconds, no, don't go, right? So I remember going down this wet rock when the drizzling rain, we're getting wet through, And I said, Jed, this is what we're going to do. He said, and I just gave him the same spiel, and he looks at me and he goes, listen, Dad, he said, you do what you want to do and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I said, right. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm jumping. Right. I said, can we let at least one of the young ones go first and see how it is? So we did that, and he said, look, if you want, I'll let you go first if you want. I said, yeah, look, I just want to get off this rock, I said. And I was like a spider going down this rock on all fours, lying back, going down to the edge, and we're just in cloud. And we had the person on the ground radioing up because the clouds was coming up the valley in different heights. And, and then we got the call, okay, good to go, And then there's not to go. And I stood up and my leg was just literally shaking, James, absolutely just shaking. And then I went back down onto all fours and then I got the go and I right up, bang, went. And I tell you, I have never, ever experienced fear like that. But anyway, we were doing some jumps and I just said to him, look, everyone was concerned about Jed. I said, don't worry about Jed, worry about me. I said, I'm the older one here. I was like 54 or something, 56 or something, 54, I think. Anyway, I said, look, we're going to throw you off. I said, just to show that you can look after yourself. So, yeah, me and a mate, we got him on the edge and one grabbed his legs and I grabbed his legs and my mate grabbed his arms and we did a 1, 2, 3 and off he went. So, yeah, and that was that.
Spectacular. Are you, how would you describe yourself as a father, Miff? You don't strike me as someone that is super strict.
No.
But yet, Jed is sometimes when you have parents that are not strict with their kids, they just go wild. But Jed is a really well-balanced guy.
Look, he is a very well-balanced guy. I'm not strict, and I do push. I have a bit of a thing, not a hang-up, but I just see teaching people to skydive and watching the changes in this 40-something years, and I just see a lot of people just can't make a decision to save themselves. And it's a bit like public speaking. It's once the curtain goes up, there you go. You're on stage and it's showtime. And same as when that door opens, it's showtime. It's not physically hard. It's a mental sport where you need to make decisions. And they're not hard decisions, but you do need to make decisions and pull these three handles in the right order. So I have a little bit of a hang-up there that, people, we wrap people up in cotton wool. And I'm a firm believer that, people that to risk take, but risk take in the right way. And I give the example of taking a 747 off the ground with 200 plus thousand litres of fuel, and they tick the boxes. Yes, we've got the fuel, we've got the food, we've got this. And if you take all those checks, there's a risk, but you're doing it with a control. It's a controlled risk. And I see a lot of the things that we do and Jed does with that, it's a controlled risk. But you do see people like that, they have less dramas than a lot of other people who don't do very much, because it's looking down the tunnel and you can see avoiding problems before they get to you. So I do have a little bit of a funny hang up with, and I do believe people do need we all need a bit of a push. And again, like doing it with the best. When he was going base jump, he's doing it with Dukes, who's the best, and and his paramedics and so forth. And I think that's part of the key. But yes, I enjoy risk taking.
If you're a fan of the 20-Minute Call, I'd like to invite you to be a member of a budding community with me on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests and gain access to some show swag. It's pretty sweet. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. Miff, during your journey as a drop zone owner now, you had an intersection with Roger Nelson. How did you come across Roger and with advancing the sport, particularly in equipment in this circumstance?
Yeah, so we wanted to introduce twin action. And I wanted to introduce twin action and throwaway pilot chutes here in Australia. And this was back in the early 90s. And we took it to the Australian Parachute Federation, but they said no, we have the SOS handle, and we believe the SOS handle with the ripcord is the safest way of training students. And then from there, my partner at the time, Kate Fluin, who's the mother of Jazz, she started writing around the world to Bill Booth and Sunshine Factory, and came in contact with Roger Nelson. And Roger, a lot of people gave help here and there, but he really stepped up to the plate. And he came back and he sort of said, look, I understand the SOS handle. And he said, yeah, it's a great concept. But he said, before we had tandems, he said, which it is probably the best concept, because the people who were walking out to do a tandem skydive, they were the people walking out to the aeroplane before tandem came to do a solo jump. The SOS handle was the best tool for the job. But once we introduced tandem skydiving, then those people were doing tandem skydiving, and we could be more selective with who was jumping out of an aircraft. Just the primacy in learning, as Roger Nelson, I think it was, he had the largest skydiving operation in the world, Skydive Chicago. And he said, if you've got ripcord and SOS and twin action and different sizes, he said, you've got all this Rubik's Cube of all these jumpers. Is he on a ripcord? Is he on a throwaway? Is he on an SOS handle? He said, whereas you've got everybody on the same equipment of throwaway and a twin action, he said, the only thing you've got to monitor is the canopy size. And it just made so much sense, And he was instrumental in writing some stuff for us, because he was respected, very respected. And with the stuff that he wrote, and we put a paper together with the help, Bill Booth actually helped us too with that, and some other people did, but Roger was instrumental. The other thing Roger was also instrumental with marketing, which we do now. Roger said to us, he said, everybody that comes to my drop zone, he said, when they leave here, they're either going to come back, they're going to be a person who's going to come back and continue skydiving. And he said, if they're not going to come back, he said, I want them to be a salesperson for me. And I want them to be selling my drop zone. And he said, for them to be able to do that, he said, I need to give them information. So he said, when people come to do a tandem skydive, he said, I bring the families in and all their friends in, and I've got an auditorium set up, and I'll explain what the tandem skydiving and what your responsibilities are, and then I'll actually explain to people what tandem skydiving leads into. So he said, when they leave, they've got this information. How'd your daughter go tandem skydiving? Did the parachute open? Yeah, it did actually, and they're wearing actually two parachutes. Yeah, what happened if the tandem master got knocked out? Oh, they actually got this thing called an automatic activation device on the parachute. Oh, and who was it with? Some stranger? No, they actually got to have licenses. So yeah, what you're doing is you're answering questions for the critics. So he actually helped us in that area too, because when I see that, I go, well, people do get asked those questions and they don't have the answers. And so Roger was good with that, and it really knocked me off a chair, because that was when we got this through. We were doing it experimental from 1996 and then in 2003 we put quite a big paper together and put that forward in 2003, and we got it approved as an acceptable training system in Australia, and then Roger was killed in 2003. So that really knocked me off my chair when that happened, and it was so rewarding listening to Rook and Missy and the kids who had just been continued on, and those interviews were great, James. And it was very satisfying, dealing with Roger and then listening to his two kids, and they were just instrumental. Listening to both of them, I could listen to Rook for hours. It was good, and it sort of gives me a motivation to get over there and meet him. And what he said about sitting on his dad's lap when in Cessna, I just think that is so cool. And when he put his own kid on his lap, I said, yeah, you've got to do that sort of thing. It's childhood memories that, you hold for a lifetime. Yeah, so I have a lot of respect for Roger.
Roger Nelson was ahead of his time.
Oh, he was way ahead of his time. And you just got to look at the size of his operation and what he was doing, He was a very instrumental, ahead of his time. He was way ahead of the game.
I came into skydiving a year before he passed away. But of all the videos that I've seen of him, he almost reminds me of a Tony Robbins type, where you just can't dream big enough. And for him, it just seemed like nothing was impossible. And with his enthusiasm and his confidence, you almost got the sense that he made others believe in things that maybe they never would have believed otherwise. And you can see that in his kids, because Rook is, doing major things with the possibility of a 200-way head down this summer. And obviously Melissa with over 20 world records, to date, and probably counting. They're just getting after it. They're not letting any limitations get to them. And it just seems that comes straight from the DNA of their dad.
Oh, definitely. But it's also for someone to give you the time. When I look at how busy, I'm just running a little Cessna operation, and he was running like one of the largest skydiving operations in the world, Skydive Chicago. So your time, for someone to give you your time and be instrumental to helping, to get something across the line, I was very, very, very humble to Roger for giving it that time, because I could see that if you're running that, go, hey guys, I've got my own thing I've got to take care of. I'd like to help you. Most people go, I'd like to help you, but I'm just too time poor. Whereas he gave us the time, and I'm forever very grateful for that.
My mentor is Danny Smith at Skydive Carolina, who I worked for almost 10 years, and his drop zone, Skydive Carolina, would not be where it is had it not been for Roger Nelson. Roger basically gave him some student gear and gave him a steal of a deal on a 182 just for him to get his start. And there's so many stories like that. It's remarkable, his generosity.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yes. Yes, and that's where I think this podcast is just so invaluable. I've just learned so much about Rook and Missy and Larry Hills and, just the whole lot of them. Who was it? Craig Gerard, I just didn't want you to say when you said to him one last question. I'm just going, no. Norman Kent, there's just been so many. And it's good to learn about other people, it's great to learn about, right. And when Rook talked about his dad, I learned more about his dad, and same as Missy. I learned some, because it's not all roses for them either. Your dad's a busy man and so forth, so I could see that side as well. But no, he was an awesome man.
I do feel like with this podcast that we're documenting history. Often I even think about everything that we're doing even right now in terms of the sport is history. We're creating history, but it drives me to want to capture these stories with you, who has an enormous history and imprint on Australian skydiving. It's important to always remember where we've come from. Let's pivot real quick, Miff. You've been running a drop zone. It is not an easy work. This is not glamorous. What has been your toughest day as a drop zone owner?
Oh, toughest day. I suppose. We went 23 years without a fatality. We had our first fatality. I wasn't actually on the airfield, and I'm touch wood. In my 47 years, James, I've never ever seen a fatality. But when we did have our first fatality, and it was back on, back within 8 hours, that was the toughest day. I didn't realise the impact that it had with just the whole dynamics of just changed everything. It's it really hurt us. It really did. It really did hurt us. That's probably my toughest day. And I've been very lucky. I haven't had many. Sure, there's days you get stressed and so forth like that. You have your engines go and things like that. But again, I've been very lucky to be surrounded by good people that have lifted me up or borrowed me money or whatever. So I have been very lucky, and I stick that with my dad, surround myself by good people. But I suppose that was my toughest day, which brought reality that, it is a dangerous sport, but it really hit me, because I thought I was going for the 25 years, and we didn't quite make it. And it is a blow when you lose a life, and it is part of it. I know it is part of it, but it was a tough day.
What would you say has been a one of the most important decisions you have made to keep the drop zone going after all this time? Was there any one thing that was like, yeah, had I not done that, I don't know if we'd still be around as a drop zone?
Yeah. Well, we finished a lease on one airfield and we didn't have anywhere else to go, and we actually found where we are now, where you visited. And that's probably the biggest bite that I've taken, because this was, a kilometre by a kilometre with not a thing on it, not one tree, no power, no water, nothing, no runways, no road in. And when we had nowhere to go, and I bought the land without a DA, we had to get a development application done. And when I purchased the land, it was, okay, we're in now, and I don't know whether we can get the development application. It was a very tight time to know, Jesus, can we do this? So it was a very, 12 months it was very, well, can we do this? But it was I had the attitude of going, yes, I can do this. We have to do this. We have to do this, and let's go. And I had my mother in my ear. So yeah, but that was probably like a pinnacle time of, okay, we've got to get over this hump. And once we did 2 years and we knew, okay, this is a happening thing, we're okay now. But it was a tough 2 years without having approvals from the government to be able to build an airfield, and we owned the land and we were doing development to it before we actually got it. So that was a sort of but the attitude was push on, just push on. And it has come together.
Miff, when I visited, I hadn't realized that you had built a building that you operate from, which is a very impressive place. I hadn't realized that when you got there was nothing. You did build the building?
Yeah, it was a bare paddock. It was a literally bare paddock, which we got 50,000 trees in, and we planted 50 acres of trees, which was part of the development application. The council said to us, they said, we're going to allow you to do an airfield. This land was stripped back in the 30s, which was obviously the wrong thing to do, but we need to revegetate it. So part of the development application is that we want you to revegetate that block. And we're 2 years in and we still hadn't done the vegetation. It was quite a big progress. And I was a scout leader. Jed was in scouts and I was a scout leader, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And the scouts do a planting once a year where they take the scouts out and they plant trees, and I was just in at their head office dropping off. Back then I was some film for an event that I did, and I just overheard them talking about planting trees, and then I popped me up and I said, listen, I've got a bit of a situation. I've got 12 months and I've got to replant this block out. And they looked at me, they said, well, look, we like private property because we like our trees to be looked after, and people who are putting in, then we do help. So they came to the party, and the first planting was 30,000 trees, which is an immense amount of number. It was just immense. It filled a tent which was 10 metres by 15 metres wide, just full of seedlings that they'd grown. And they had 60 crew that they had here, and the first day there was 580 kids, and the second day there was 430 kids, and they brought them through and they inducted them through a tent, and they showed them what the planting of trees do and why we're doing it and how to plant them. Then they went to the next day where they had a sausage sizzle, they put some food in their belly, and then one crew would take out 10 kids, and they Saturday, and they had the job completely done by 2:00 on the Sunday. 30,000 trees in. It was just immense.
That is extraordinary.
So that was a big. It is extraordinary. So yeah, that's probably been one of the very satisfying things, is turning a completely blank canvas with no water, no power, no telephone cables, and no runways, no road in, no buildings. My dear old dad was here. He was by that stage, I think, 83. and we got the pegs, and we're pegging out the runways, and you've got this instrument called a dumpy level, and a dumpy level is like a sight with a crosshair that you look through, and it keeps, so if you want your runway straight, you put the pegs in, for a kilometre, and you look through this, and one person will go out, and the other person who's looking through this like a binocular will tell the person to go left or right, and you bang the peg in, and that marks where your runway is. And Dad said to me, look, I'm not doing the walking. He said, I'll look through that, and you can do the walking. And so I walk up with the first peg, and I'm going, where do I go, Dad? Where do I go? And Dad's looking through, and he said, where's the crosshairs? He said, where's the crosshairs where I aim you up with, And so I walked back down, and I looked through the binocular, and the two crosshairs are there. I said, the crosshairs are there, Dad. And he looks through, and he said, I can't see them. I said, looks like you're doing the walking. So there's my dad. He's with me, and he helped me peg the whole job out. But it's pegging the runways out, and pegging the road out, and pegging the car park out, and pegging where the buildings would go, and so forth. Yeah, it was probably the biggest bite, one of the biggest bites on building something that I've done in my time.
Miff, when I was there, I was so impressed with your operation, not knowing that you'd build that whole place from scratch. Do you ever wake up in the morning and just look around and go, wow, it's amazing what you've built? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do. And that's what my friend told me. He said, take photos from photo points. Because the person said to me, he said, you'll feel like you're not getting anywhere, which at times you just feel like you're not. And I took photos from photo points. And then when you go through the photos, it's go boom, boom. Oh, yeah, okay, there is things happening. So I do get a lot of satisfaction. I do get a lot of satisfaction. And I also get that, I thought when I built it, I said, I've been jumping at drop zones for something like 25, 30 years. I can build this exactly how I want it, And then when it's built up and you go, that's not quite how I visualised it. I don't. And I have a lot of appreciation now when you walk in and say, why'd you build something like this? And you go, I don't understand why. Because they have visualised, and then when you build it, you go, But no, I get immense satisfaction out of seeing something that I have built, and a lot of people have given me a lot of help and support.
It must be so satisfying to build something and then to have a community spend all their time there.
Oh yeah, it's a tribe. I'm a native sort of person, and it's a tribe. And yeah, it's building something where people are comfortable and want to belong to, and keeping the tribe healthy. I'm very, very have a very strong belief system into how, like, the Indians and how the tribe works, and from starting from the top down, that you make sure you look after yourself first, and then your siblings, and then your upper crew, and then it washes down from there, and keeping it strong. I think the way the natives do it and the tribal way is a very good, very successful way of running things. That's wisdom. Share with us, Miff, there's a joke in skydiving that in order to make $1 million, you must start with 2 million. You didn't start with 2 million, but your drop zone has endured through time many challenges, many ups and downs, I am sure you've had many stressful nights going, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep the lights on type thing. And yet you have continued to thrive and build little by little. If somebody were to seek some advice on how to build a drop zone, what advice would you impart? Oh, look, it's one, I sort of don't see it like that. I see that I've got one of the most interesting occupations or job or career or lifestyle is, a lot of people specialise in as again, like my mum said, like if your dad's a draftsman, he goes to work and you're doing the same thing, you're drawing the same thing. If you're a pilot, you're just flying from A to B. Whereas mine, I'm either flying the plane. I don't jump so much now, but you're jumping, or you're in the desk, driving the desk and working logistics out, or if the cleaner hasn't come, you're down cleaning the toilet and shower block. So the variety is so much. But I do think that for people who are aspiring or anything who's wanting to do it, it's having a positive approach and problem solving, and thinking it through, but sometimes you just got to get up and do it, I'm a big one on, if you're not failing, you're not doing enough. I think failure is a good thing. Failure shows you that your mistake, and then you look at it and you go, right, we need to do it differently. It's only when you fail and you keep doing it the same way, expecting a different result, which I think that's when they think you're a bit is insanity. But I think that failing is a good thing. I think failing, I keep saying to Jed and Jazz, I said failing is gives you direction, and I said, and that's where a lot of people won't have a go at something because they're scared at failing. But when you get into something and it fails, you go, okay, that's not the right way. Let's go down here now. Okay, that's not right. Then you can go down here, and then you go, whoa, this is working. As we know, in this time span, things will eventually, come to ends. Like VHS, go to CDs and then USBs, and now they're gone. And so you've got it. You do have to keep changing because what's here today is gone tomorrow. But it's as I said again, skydiving is constantly changing. Like everyone's, it's not like the old days. And I said, yeah, well, the old days weren't like the old days before that, and it goes on. That's life.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people of Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Miff, I'm always fascinated to hear people's stories of a crossroads moment in their life. And if you've listened to this podcast and you know this question is coming, can you share a crossroads moment that had you not said yes to something, or maybe had you not said no to something, or had you not met someone that would prove to be instrumental in your path, it's likely that you and I are not talking today, and you are probably not having had the career that you've enjoyed. Can you think of a crossroads moment?
Oh, definitely. Well, probably my crossroad is when we bought that first tandem rig. We had Jed, and Mum wasn't that keen. She just said, stability is the irrigation business, and skydiving isn't stable. It's very unstable. It's a new business, and it's untried, and tandem skydiving was dangerous back then, with the parachutes were just not up to what they are now, and there was a lot of pressure from outside people not to proceed forward with the skydiving. That is just not a secure business to have with children. But again, for me, it wasn't a tough choice. It was definitely a crossroad. But just my passion was just too strong, which my dad never understood me skydiving. He goes to me, Dad used to go to me, he goes, now, mate, he says, this skydiving stuff, he said, I can understand you doing 1 jump, 2 jumps. He said, even 25 jumps. But he said, how many times can you go, and pull the ripcord? 10 times, 20 times. He goes, yeah, nobody must be wearing off. Whereas my mother completely understood it. She said, I could see with just your passion, and she said, you come home with rosy cheeks. She said, I could tell by the cheeks and your facial expression and your whole attitude that this was something that you were going to continue to do. She said, I could see that it really made you feel good, which it has, and that challenge of going, like people said to me, I don't think that's a very good idea, continuing down a road with a tandem rig, and in an unstable environment, which is dangerous, unstable. Financially, it doesn't look that very good when you've got a very strong irrigation business, which would grow and flourish. And it was, very satisfying. That actually gave me more drive for something that I loved to make it work. And with anything you love, it's got the best chance of success. So that's probably my biggest crossroads. But there is always, it's just making decisions, and quite often you make a decision, you go, whoa, that's not so good, let's back out of there and go there. I get a great rush when you take somebody who's never skydived, and like Teagues and Jed and Bryce, and then they come up through the ranks and then they're flying rings around you and then telling you what to do. Like we go, we don't do it like that anymore. And you go, all right, how do we do it now? And then I think, yeah, job's done. Job's done. I get an immense satisfaction out of seeing somebody that you can, fly rings and do it better than what you can, and then just stand back and then watch them.
Do you think about legacy? How will you be remembered?
I don't really think of legacy. I do think that, my daughter's got a very strong passion. Like Teagues is going to take over in July. He was going to take over earlier. I said, look, I'd like to get to July because that'll be my 35th year of being a chief instructor. But my daughter, Jazz, she goes, what? You're my chief instructor? No, you need to be my chief instructor. You need to keep being chief instructor, Dad. Sorry, you're Jed's chief instructor. So no, you need to keep... So we're in a little bit of a tussle there. She goes, no, I don't want anyone else to be my chief instructor. I want you to be my chief instructor. But 35 years, Teagues has planned to take the reins as chief instructor, take more over the running of SA Skydiving. And, I do want to still nurture my daughter. And I said, look, I'll always be your chief instructor, I said. I'm sure I can do a deal with Teagues that I can remain undercover as your chief instructor. That's really my legacy, I suppose. Is I do want to see it continue on. As I said, I'm very passionate about skydiving. I think it's something that's given me an excellent life. And I just imagine if I did stay in that irrigation business and what it would be now, I think I would have probably a very good, successful company, but I'd have nowhere near the passion what I do now.
So if you're going to not be quite as involved, what are you going to do with this extra time?
I'm going to be involved. Definitely going to be involved. I'm not a sit on the fence person. But I'm very passionate about travelling around to drop zones. One of my bucket lists is to get over and go to Skydive Chicago. Just to complete that. It's a bit of a bucket list thing, and gather ideas. I'm still passionate with the change of instructional. I feel that we could, there's a lot more room for improvement, with teaching practices. Flocking's probably been the best thing that I've seen come to the sport with teaching canopy, because that's where our problems are. So I'm still very passionate about canopy piloting and teaching. So I'm very passionate. I'd like to see us better seatbelted in aircraft, We've been working on a different seatbelt configuration for aircraft, and I'd like to see us double pointed into a plane, not single pointed. That was listening to who you interviewed, who just skips my mind, who was in the Paris Valley in the Twin Otter that crashed.
Yeah, Dan BC.
I listened to that, and that sort of inspired me and gave me a lot more thing that we need to be better seatbelted into aircraft. I come from an era where seatbelts, we used to go to Queensland in the back of a station wagon on a double mattress towing the caravan with no seatbelts at all. And I remember my dad when they brought the law in that you've got to wear a lap belt in the front to wearing, you had to wear it, and he's going, what the bloody hell's this all coming to, And then you had the seat belt where it wasn't on a stalk and the belt would drop down between the bucket seat, and you can't even get the bloody belt. It's down beside the seat, and the belt's all tangled up. And then someone invented the inertia belt with the steel cable that you can just roll it over. And you just wouldn't get in a motor car now without a seat belt. You just wouldn't, if you couldn't, you just wouldn't get in a car. Skydiving is, I think, we're very scared of our regulators that if we open up a Pandora's box, they're going to come down on us. Whereas I'm sort of got the attitude I think we need to keep improving. So I want to continue on and see if I can make a few things a little bit better with getting a seat belted better in the aircraft. And teaching of canopy piloting, because that's where our problems are, is the manufacturers have just out-accelerated us being able to teach canopy pilot, Well, I remember Gyro, gave us the first high-performance canopy, which was like a Sapphire 220, And we just didn't think parachutes could go any faster than that. You know? And we've come through to an era where we're teaching students on that, and Jed's jumping like a 77 square foot parachute, and they're coming and screaming, but our teaching practices have not kept up, and I just see, animation and virtual reality is what's required, but because we're such a small industry, it's just not affordable. And where do you have that? But yeah, that's what I would love to tinker with.
I have some folks I need to introduce you to. One thing I admire about you, Miff, is that I know many drop zone owners who, after 10, 20 odd years, they're burnt out. But you love skydiving. I mean, you still love this sport. And it is refreshing to see that you've been in the game for a while and you're still pushing forward. And I'd say that's an inspiration.
Yeah, I do talk about burnout because I think burnout, you're responsible for yourself and you've got to recognise it before it comes. And again, I got this from Michelle Obama. You do need to take care of your own well-being first. Like, put your mask on first. First aid, you take care of your safety first. We teach that in AFF, that your safety comes first, and then what you can offer from there. And you've got to recognise it. And that's why I always say to people, look, I'm pretty most important here. I've got to watch myself and my well-being, because if you burn yourself out, you're no good to anybody. And I think it's very important for people to take care of themselves and know when to step back. So I'm also very good at knowing when, okay, time to go have some fun doing something else. And I've also had the fortunate ability with having Jed, which keeps you motivated, like, oh, okay, we're going post jumping now. Which is something that I wouldn't have done normally. So he's actually inspired me. Like, a lot of people call him my dad. They go, because he's the responsible one. They go, oh, here comes your dad. Here comes your dad. And they look around and go, Dad. So yeah, with that, I'm very conscious of my well-being, that keeping the passion, and then I'm also very conscious of people coming through and bringing that down, because the negativity. When a girl called me block harness, when someone comes through with negativity, oh, this is fucked and this is not right and I'm not bloody happy, a girlfriend of mine, Susie McAvoy, who is the daughter of Dave McAvoy at Toogoolawah. She has a fence where she blocks, just blocks that, just puts the arm off, and she said, I just go into my happy place. And then when someone comes out and goes, you're doing a great job, and your arms are open and you're taking that in, you're taking that energy into your chest, and knowing how to block and harness. But again, Dad said, surround yourself by the best, and it's up to you to make sure that you weed out those people.
That's great self-awareness, because when you are in the forest, if you will, of your drop zone, where you're the chief cook and bottle washer, you're the pilot, you're the person that's cleaning the plane, you're the person that's cleaning the toilets, you're the person that's checking in people. On any given day, you're doing those tasks. It can be easy to burn out and lose sight of the big picture. So I think what you've just said is so key, and maybe from my experience working with many drop zone owners, that's a huge part of this, is to take a step back from the business when you start feeling yourself burning out. It's hard for people to do. They just know go, go, go.
Yeah, and shape things to the way that you want them shaped, which I've kept the drop zone small. I've been sort of the same size for, nearly 30 years now, which has suited my lifestyle, with my kids. A lot of people, let's go big. And I just go, oh, look, I just think we've got a good size, and it's what suits, that size suits me, that it works well with having my family. And as I said, I can have my kids with me at work, and I can run it the way that I want to run it. And a lot of people get sucked into going down the road that really doesn't suit them, and they're trying to keep other people happy. And I think it's very important that who want to make a dream come true, they've got to keep it their dream. you know, and yeah, looking after yourself. You know, it's keeping that, what I call keeping the dream alive. You've got to keep the dream alive. You know, and I could see that with my dad, who he went through to 95, but you can see that the dream sort of disappears, you know, and as soon as that dream sort of dies, you can see that your soul, you know, and you can see that your body is. But you've got to keep change going. I think change is an important thing. I think it's just instrumental to change.
Oh, Miff, this has been an amazing conversation, great wisdom, and a joy for me to get to learn of your journey beyond Miff, the drop zone owner of SA Skydiving. Wow, what a journey. And thank you for sharing. And most of all, Miff, thank you for being such a great example.
Thank you.
Fabulous example.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, Miff, it's been a real pleasure. And I hope that our paths will cross again one day soon. I'm a huge fan of yours. You left such a strong impression on me, as did Jed and some of the other crew with Bryce and others. So it's been a wonderful time in my life that I spent with you all, and I hope we can do it again.
Well, as I said, one of my bucket lists is to get across to the States and go to Skydive Chicago, but with my daughter, Jazz, who's 17. So I definitely will be looking her up.
Perfect. Thank you again.
All right. Thanks, James.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.